Is why should we look at SEP? What makes you guys different from all the other competitors in the backup market? And what are your unique features and functionality and stuff like that? So I would say overall, the thing that we focus on, the most is offering one solution for an entire enterprise. So a lot of the folks that we speak with have multiple solutions in place. It could be a solution for Windows, another solution for Linux. They might have a niche product for virtual technology. A lot of times if they have, many outlying locations, it could be kind of a hodgepodge of different solutions, and everything's kind of patched together. Sometimes there's things that are missing from that schedule, missing from that overall architecture. And so a lot of folks are moving towards standardizing down to one solution and just having one central management interface console to manage their entire enterprise, whether that be all in one data center or spread around the globe. Second main thing we focus on is performance. So we're able to do multi-streaming, and we can back up an unlimited number of streams to disk and up to 64 streams per tape drive. So 2 tape drives, 128 streams, and that scales up. So really what that means is we're able to maximize whatever bandwidth we have to work with. So if we have a 10 gig connection, we can maximize that, and we'll talk about some speeds coming up here in a little bit. The third main thing we focus on is reliability. So we are originally a German-based company, and the data security laws are quite a bit different in Germany than they are in North America. So we adhere to the strictest data security laws, pretty much that there are. And so one of those laws in Germany says that if we tell a company that we're going to back up their data, we actually become 100% financially responsible for that other company's data. So the scenario where you do a backup and you go to do a restore and you have a file that's missing or is only partially full or is completely empty, that simply just doesn't happen with our solution. If you get a positive confirmation that a backup task was completed successfully, your data is going to be there 100% of the time. And then the last item on here, cost. I wouldn't say it's something that we focus on as a company, but I do think it is a differentiator between us and some of the other folks in the market, in the backup market, because we typically come in at about 40% of industry average for enterprise backup software. So typically a pretty significant cost savings, goes along with being able to bring everything under one umbrella and offer, higher performance. So I do think it is relevant. So from a product integration standpoint, just kind of touch on some of the main things that we see on a day-to-day basis here. So our base product, our backup server itself, the server software itself, can run on Windows, Linux, or Unix. It looks identical across all platforms. Really doesn't matter, which operating system a user would like to choose. We typically just recommend using whichever one you're most comfortable with. And then we have clients or agents for pretty much every operating system under the sun. From an application standpoint and database and virtual technology, we do everything on, at a native API level. So we're able to get very granular with the backups and the restores that we're able to provide. So, Exchange, we actually, in our new version, just came out with a new module for Exchange. It looks really slick. It pops up a window that looks exactly like Outlook. You can drag and drop emails from one window to another, and it just automatically restores individual emails. You can do the same with users. So it's very intuitive, very easy to use. and is a very powerful tool as well. Similar for SharePoint, very similar new module that we have that just came out for SharePoint. We also do the same for Nopal. So for group-wise, we can get very granular, so we can do single email, single user restores, and then also for Lotus and a bunch of other email platforms as well. And just like we do with the applications on the database side, again, everything's native communication. So for Oracle, we're using RMAN. For SAP, we're using backends. SQL is going to be controlled by VSS. So very simple to have native communication and have everything really be truly supported from the minute the backup starts to the time it's completed. So it's not just dumping files into a folder and backing those up and hope that process works every time, and normally it does. We can support that as well. But having that native communication and being able to do some special things with those databases, it can be really helpful for day-to-day administrators. And then on the virtual side, everything's supported: VMware, Hyper-V, Citrix, open source net. Later this year, I believe, we'll be coming out with support for KVM, and there's possibly some others that may be supported down the road as well. And then on the bare metal side, we also support bare metal for Windows, Windows workstations, and also for Linux. So offering a single console to manage all the locations or an entire enterprise, I think, is really important, because it basically just gives you a single pane of glass to go to anytime to, pull up different locations or just look at your backup strategy as a whole. We can also split this up and divide, the backup tasks amongst different users. So, if you have a remote location or remote campus or, a remote part of your business in a different state, it's very easy to assign, someone locally there different rights so that they could do restores only, for example. We can also customize the GUIs, so if you have a database administrator who only cares about backing up Oracle and that's his only job, he can customize his GUI so that when he opens SEP, all he sees are his Oracle jobs, and he doesn't have to go wade through 300 other locations and see how all the backups are doing. So it's really designed to be easy to maximize workflow and just make it simple for its users. The GUIs are stackable and they're unlimited, so you can put GUIs on whatever workstation you might come in contact with throughout the day. And as long as you're logging in from a workstation that's been authenticated or a server that's been authenticated, then you really have access to the backups from anywhere. So that makes it very convenient as well. So just to go over kind of a very simplified version of a typical kind of environment that we commonly work with, we'll just kind of run through this little diagram real quick, and I can just kind of describe how we would approach backing up certain things in this environment. So on the left-hand side, you can see there's a main SEP server. We could have local disk attached to that. We could have just a bunch of hard drives in that server itself and use that for a main backup target, or have a NAS or something else attached as well. And then we could also have that attached to a SAN, which is there in the middle. We could back up to disk first, then we could backup data to tape. We could have other, disk devices that are attached as well. We could back up from one SAN and then have that replicate to another. So there's quite a bit of, diversity and quite a bit of options that we have, whenever we schedule the backups. You can see along the bottom, right under that, the circle with the SAN, there's a file server, a database server, an email server, and a directory server. And one cool thing that we can do is with the file server and the database server, you can see that they're connected to the backup server across that local area network, but they're also directly connected to that SAN. And so we can actually just push the data directly from those servers to that SAN. So that'll work over fiber or iSCSI, and we can have multiple servers pushing data at the same time to the same SAN, and actually to the same SAN volume as well. So that's a huge performance increase over most solutions, and it really just simplifies things. It reduces network traffic. So if you're running a 24/7 environment and don't have don't want to maximize or max out your LAN traffic overnight, then it's very easy to just do direct backups to SAN. And then we can see on the right-hand side of that SAN circle, there's also a virtual pool. If that virtual pool is residing on a SAN itself, then we can just back up directly from one LUN to another. If that virtual environment's separated out but directly connected to the SAN, then we can push those image level backups directly to a SAN as well. And then backing up out to a cloud, we can send data to the cloud. We're able to back up through multiple firewalls with very minimal number of ports that are required to be opened. I believe it's 2. And so we can push data to the cloud depending on how folks want to set things up. We could even install SEP in a cloud environment and then pull data up to the cloud from other locations. And then we can also manage remote sites here on the bottom. So we can back up anything at a remote location, files, databases, virtual, and then have that all back up to either to locally attached storage. That could be disk, it could be a tape library, it could be a NAS or a SAN or whatever the case, and then we can either migrate or replicate that data to other locations as well. So we could send everything back to the main data center. We could send it to a different location. Really, whatever backup strategy you'd like to implement, or whatever you're currently doing, if that's working for you, it's going to be very easy to set up and configure. So getting back to the performance a little bit, we do things quite a bit differently than a lot of our competitors. So instead of backing up these 9 servers in the traditional fashion, which would be to start the Windows server, wait for that one to finish, go onto the Linux server, and then move over to the Mac server, etc. What we do is we set up different task groups. And so we would set up a task group for files. We could set up a task group for virtual machine backups, one for databases, one for sys volumes. We have a DR task group. So even though we have 9 servers here on the left-hand side that we're going to be backing up with all different operating systems, we would just kick off that schedule and it would start all of the backup tasks at the same time. So we could have several different streams running off of each server for each one of those different task groups. And so, backing up these 9 servers, we could have 20 or 30 or 40 different streams running concurrently at the same time. And so that's really how we're able to maximize our bandwidth. So typical speeds that we expect to see on a 1 gig connection, we typically expect to see about around 100 to 125 gigs an hour, with theoretical maximum being just over 125. And then on a 10 gig connection, we expect about 1.2 terabytes. Dual 10 gig, 2.4 terabytes, and it just scales up. So we pretty much always expect to see backups running at theoretical maximum speeds, depending on whatever bandwidth we have to work with. So just a couple examples of real-world scenarios, and kind of what I've been going over, really applies to actual situations and actual companies and organizations that are using SEP on a daily basis. So Vodafone, they're the partner company of Verizon in Europe. They have us rolled out to 3,500 locations currently. I believe by the end of this year it should be 4,800 locations total. And they manage everything from one central management console. So again, just kind of showing that you can have, you know, a lot of different locations, you know, doing backups pretty much around the clock and manage everything from one central console, which makes things, I think, extremely easy for folks that are used to remoting into various solutions and different sites all over the place, you know, whether it's across the world or just in another department in a university. You know, it's much easier just to open your console and have everything right there. U.S. National Archiving and Record Administration, we took over their enterprise email system, which was GroupWise. We took that over probably about 2.5 years ago now. And when we first spoke with those guys, they were doing backups around the clock. So they would start a backup on Friday afternoon or Friday evening, and it would run until the next Friday in the afternoon. So there's basically a period of, you know, 6-7 hours on Friday afternoon when they weren't doing a backup. The whole rest of the week was just one nonstop continuous backup. So we leveraged our multi-streaming and our direct communication with GroupWise, and the first full backup we did for those guys was 13 hours. And after we made some, you know, little modifications, and it wasn't even hardware modifications, it was just, you know, kind of tuning the server and doing some other things, we were able to get that full backup time down to 11 hours. So they went from, you know, one backup a week if it completed successfully, to doing full backups every night. So they had a much, much better backup and retention policy, and it went from, you know, probably about a 65% success rate up to, you know, 100% success rate with backups completing every night. Port of San Diego, again, they went from, you know, a little over 100 hours for a full backup down to under 4 hours, and that was all due to the multi-streaming. We didn't change any hardware. We didn't, you know, swap anything out. It was basically just going from a solution that didn't do multi-streaming to SEP. And then Public Works Government Services Canada, they back up 42 locations across the country and manage everything from one central management console. Some of the educational institutions that we work with and support, Georgetown University, they had a situation where they had pretty much two people, one or two backup administrators who were either always on call on the weekends or just kind of camped out at the university to try and make sure that their backups were going to go through. And they basically just spent all weekend babysitting the backups. So we got a call, I think it was like 4 or 5, 6 months after they installed SEP, and they said, hey, we just wanted to let you guys know that the amount of money that we've saved on overtime has already paid for your solution. So we thought that was pretty cool. And they went from, you know, babysitting backup tasks all weekend long to just having a solution that really is set it, forget it. They schedule their backup tasks, everything ran, and they, you know, really got their weekends back and didn't have to be in there tinkering with a backup solution that just wasn't working. Rutgers University, they increased their performance and reliability. Widener, another example of having, you know, 50-hour plus backup window be reduced to 8 hours, and a couple other examples. So we do also offer archiving. It is a worm technology, and basically you're able to use it as a file lock so that you know, users can't go in and accidentally or intentionally delete or modify any information it really just locks down an entire backup set so that it can't be modified or deleted or anything until an expiration date. And you can also set that expiration date for never. So it will, theoretically always be there and be available. We also offer deduplication. So currently our deduplication is a source side global, the destination side global dedupe. And so users are able to basically just throw everything together. So whether you're doing image level backups or file level backups or native database level backups, all of it just gets thrown into one central dedupe repository. And because it's a global dedupe solution, you can be backing up from multiple different locations. If you have overlapping databases, so if you're getting a snapshot from a virtual machine and then you're backing up, an MS SQL database from that same machine, those footprints are just going to go together. It's variable bit or variable block size. So, the smaller we make those blocks, the more it's going to deduplicate, the better rates you're going to see. And really compared to anything on the market, it's pretty impressive as to, the kind of dedupe rates that we're seeing. One of our initial beta testers for that about a year ago now gave us a call after he was testing for a while and said he was doing full backups. He was backing up about 6 or 7 terabytes every night, and he had been doing full backups every night for 6 months, and he had taken up just over 7.5 terabytes of actual used space. And when he calculated it out, he said, if he was just doing full backups every night without the dedupe, it would have been about 520 terabytes that he'd be using. So pretty good rates that we're seeing. And then I put generic drivers on here, and what we mean by that is we don't write our own custom drivers or have our own custom driver configurations. We're able to back up to any type of device that's recognized by an operating system. So it could be, NAS, SAN, disk, tape, really doesn't matter to us. As long as, that device is recognized by an operating system, we're able to use it as a backup target. So I think that's really helpful for 2 main reasons. One is if you are looking to switch over to a new solution and, you want to switch to SEP, you don't have to go out and buy a bunch of custom hardware or, call us up and say, hey, is this hardware supported? We work with, XYZ products. You just know that you can plug in whatever you already have. It's going to work. And you don't have to go out and buy a completely new infrastructure just to support a new backup solution. And the other the other really good thing about that also is moving forward, if you want to go out and buy, a brand new technology that comes out, you don't have to call us and ask if it's supported. You don't have to wait around for us to come up with drivers for it. You can just go get whatever you'd like. You can plug it in and it'll work. So it makes things a lot more simple, and I think really gives people an advantage to use whatever hardware they like or have or can afford, and also support the newest technology coming out as soon as it's released. So like I mentioned, we offer bare metal for Linux, Windows, and Windows workstations, and basically this just gives you a bootable image file. If the server were to go down, you could restore to similar or dissimilar hardware. You would boot up an ISO image or install a CD, and it just goes through and asks if you want to have, same partition sizes, different partition sizes, and pretty much just makes it very fast for you to get everything back up and running, the way it was. And is a big help because it does support dissimilar hardware as well. So we have full support for NetApp environments. So we have a direct connect for NetApp, and it does a couple things that's really cool. The first thing is we're able to back up NetApp devices about 6 times faster than traditional NetApp NDMP backups. So, for large amounts of data, that can be, a huge advantage for folks that have NetApp. And one of the other really cool things that we're able to do is when we back up from a NetApp device, you can restore that data anywhere. So, typically when you back up with a NetApp NDMP push, you have to restore that data back to the same NetApp device with the same NetApp serial number. And with SEP, with our direct connect, you can back up to a different SAN, you can back up to, just a disk array. You can put the data wherever you'd like. So we had a customer in Switzerland, a pharmaceutical company, I believe, who had a couple disks go bad on their NetApp device, and for whatever reason, they weren't able to get their replacement disks, as soon as they thought they were. And they were able to restore all of the data that they needed to a different SAN, and we got a very nice letter from them a couple weeks later. And personally, I didn't even know that this was as important of a feature as it is. But we got a very nice letter from them just saying, hey, we just wanted to thank you guys. We were able to restore all of our data to a different SAN and have it back up and running. And had that not been the case, we would have lost about $1 million a day because it was their, most important mission critical SAN that they had going. So, so yeah, after that, I realized that that is a very important feature and something that can be very useful. So backing up Exchange, like I mentioned, we do have a new release for Exchange that's in our new version, which should be out in a couple weeks. Has a very easy to manage console. You can drag and drop one window to another, restore a single email, single users, or an entire instance of Exchange as well. Full support for MS SQL. Everything we do with Microsoft is VSS aware, so we have for point-in-time restores. We can cross-restore between different databases, and probably the most useful for day-to-day administrators is all of the log backups can be done with or without truncate options. So you don't have to go into SQL Manager and manage that yourself. You can just let SEP do it for you. So a couple cool things that we do with Oracle. Two main things. The communication with Oracle, like I mentioned before, is directly with RMAN. So what we do a little bit differently than a lot of our competitors, most of our competitors, when they go to backup Oracle, they'll send a command to RMAN and say, hey, RMAN, give us a copy of your data. So RMAN dumps a copy of the data into a landing zone, and then the backup software goes into that landing zone and picks up all the data and backs it up to a backup target. And what we do differently is when we communicate with RMAN, we take a direct handoff of that data. So RMAN hands the data directly to SEP, and then we write that either to disk or to tape or cloud or wherever it's going. And we do that directly. So it eliminates the intermediary step of writing that data into a landing zone and then having to go in and pick that up. So first thing it does is automatically cuts in half the hardware requirements and the storage requirements for all of your Oracle databases because you no longer need that landing zone. And then the second thing it does is because we're only writing that data one time now, it instantly cuts that backup window in half. And then we're also able to have multiple streams communicating with RMAN running at the same time. So not only do we see that 50% reduction in the backup window for Oracle, when we leverage the multi-streaming, that's decreased even further. So it's very common for us to take a 10-hour Oracle backup window and reduce that down to 1 or 2 hours. That's very easy to do and very realistic. Obviously depending on bandwidth constraints and network environment and stuff that we have to work with. But we do see reductions like that very often. We also offer full support for SAP. We've been a close partner with SAP for close to 20 years now. We have the highest level certification of any third-party vendor, and we've supported SAP HANA for about, I believe, a little over a year now. And we also have, different modules for Business One and all the, legacy SAP applications as well. Again, native communication, everything we do with SAP is through backend interface. We also offer full support for all of Novell products. So again, everything we're doing with Novell is native communication through the API. So we're able to back up, e-directory, trustee rights. We can restore individual rights. We can, back up NSS volumes, full support for NSS volumes. And one of the cool things that we're able to do as well is support NSS volumes running on VMware also. So if you do a agentless backup of VMware, of a VM that has NSS volumes, you don't have to put a client or an agent on that VM to be able to back up those NSS volumes. You can just do a regular snapshot like you normally would, and restore individual files or anything you'd like out of that. Like I mentioned, full support for GroupWise, so we can do single email, single user, or full post office restores. And everything that we have for Novell is cluster ready as well, so full support for all Novell clustering. We also support Mac, so it can be server, desktop, laptop, anything running Mac OS is fully supported. So a couple cool things that we do with virtual technology. For the VMware side of things, we have, for all of the virtual technology we support, the VMware, the Citrix, and the Hyper-V, everything we do is agentless. So you don't have to put clients or agents on the VMs themselves. We just authenticate into vSphere or into XenCenter, and it automatically will populate all of the hosts that you have, all of the guests that are running on each host. If you have HA enabled, it'll track any movement, of any guests on the different hosts. And so everything is fully agentless. And then we also have change block tracking, so that we can do full backups on the weekend and then incremental backups nightly or throughout the day, or whatever the required backup schedule is. But that really is just a time saver, so we can just do those incremental backups, so we don't have to go in and do full backups every day and take those snapshots every day. And then one of the new features that we have for VMware, which is really cool, is it's an instant restore feature. So when we back up a copy of a VM, we're able to separate out the VMDK file. And so if we back up to a shared volume, so say we back up to an NFS share, for example, if a VM were to go down, instead of their traditional procedure of going in and restoring that VM, back to the same pool or to a different, VMware host, which we're able to do, and waiting for that whole process to complete, we can actually just point VMware to that backup copy, and it'll spin it up, within a minute or two, and have it completely back up and running and in production, and will automatically migrate that VM back into the VMware pool. So it's very cool. So if someone were to have, say someone had a 1 gig infrastructure and they had a 1 terabyte VM, that's typically that could take up to 10 hours to restore in a typical environment. And so being able to just switch over and instantly get that VM back up and running and not have that downtime is a huge advantage for folks. On the Citrix side, we are able to prevent activation loss. So if we have if you have a Windows VM that's running and it goes down, you don't have to, and you restore it, you don't have to go in and enter your Windows product key code or anything like that. And that's the same for all third-party applications running on the VM. So our snapshotting process is very simple. We just create an LVM snapshot, we mount it, back it up, unmount it, and delete it. So it's a very clean process. It doesn't leave a whole bunch of junk on your backup server or laying around anywhere. It's a very clean and precise process. So here's a slide that basically just kind of talks about VMware, how it scales out, how we can scale out to large environments, and really how this works in an enterprise versus niche products that are just able to support smaller VMware environments. This really does scale out to be able to support thousands of VMs across tens or hundreds or even thousands of hosts. And is truly ready for the enterprise. Here is a screenshot of what it looks like to back up VMware. I'm just going to kind of jump through this real quick so we can get into the live demo portion. This is all stuff that we'll see during that part as well. One last thing I will touch on, SEP is able to schedule automatic restores, and it's multi-node aware. So whether it's virtual machines or databases or different applications, we can back up a copy of the data and then schedule an automatic restore. So as soon as that data is backed up, it can automatically be restored to a different VM pool, for example, to have a warm standby. Or we could have do the same thing with databases. So if you have transactional databases that are just going throughout the day, we could back those up, multiple times throughout the day or every half hour, or, whatever the desired use case is. So it's something that can come in handy quite a bit. Some of the new features in our latest 4.4 release are the VMware Instant Recovery that I talked about. Also, single file restore for NSS volumes running on VMware. We do offer full support for GroupWise 2014, and our deduplication got some upgrades in the past version as well. Also offer replication between deduplicated data stores. Last release saw full support for SEP HANA, and also introduced single port network requirements. So that is pretty much it for my part of the presentation. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to James Delmonico now so that we can get into a live demo portion. So if anyone has any questions over what we've gone over so far, please go ahead and type those into the questions box on the GoToMeeting console. And while we're switching over here, we can take a second to answer any questions that have come in so far. And it actually doesn't look like there's any questions so far. So James, I will go ahead and turn it over to you and let you get started. And if you guys do have any questions, while James is going through this, please do enter those into the question section, and then we'll have a little Q&A when James is finished.
Thanks, Amai. This is a fresh install we did of the server product on Windows 2012. And everything that we do in our GUI is the exact same for different operating systems. We even use the same jar file. It's just an example of what our source browser looks like. We've done the exact same server installation here on plus 11 machine. And when we deal with storage, the disk storage here is our data store target. And this allows us to do an unlimited number of channels or streams out to that storage device. In this case, we've just set the concurrency to 25 here, and then we've told it to use the path mount data where we have a little bit of storage space. here we're setting a licensed amount of storage. I've got it on auto-detect the disk size here. We also have deduplication here at this level. So if we created a new data store and just set it to do deduplication, then like magic, it makes a deduplication storage. The logical units we use to actually do the backups are these media pools. And the only property between the media pools is the retention time. So here we've got 7 days. Anything I write into this pool will stay there for a week. Commonly in a production environment, I'd see, monthly, annual, archival, 2-year, 5-year, 7-year, 11-year, whatever the requirements are for the environment. Notably, these are all presented flat here. So it doesn't matter if they're disk or tape or SAN, or if they're on a different host, or if they're a share or on a different operating system. All we have to worry about is just, setting the right retention period and putting the data into the right media pool. When we go and connect to any client, we use the source browser. And so in this case, we set up a default backup for the system volume. Here we're using this all tag. On a Linux or Unix machine, that means slash. On a Windows machine, that means we're setting up a VSS context below the block devices. So our all backups here will pick up things like hidden partitions, Windows system recovery partitions or UEFI partitions, things like that. So in this case, I want to descend to different file systems, so I will see /boot, and to get that job going, all I do is put it into a scheduling group. So at that point, I've got our system volume backup done. On this system, we have a couple other installations. We support Microsoft SQL. Again, we're using the same all tag there. You can get specific items or specific databases or files, but the nice thing about the all tag is that when a user goes and adds a database or a development database or anything like that, then that's just taken care of automatically. So again, we're just making the jobs, and then we just put them into a scheduling group to have those work. Here's an example of what it looks like to add a Windows machine as a client. I'll just use that other server. We just select the operating system from the supported operating systems, and we make a new client. Then we get the source browser availability so we can look at what's running on there. System recovery is the Windows rollback interface, some drivers. This is also your local registry and Active Directory if Active Directory is involved in the environment. We include licensing for open files with all operating systems. We also include licensing for Active Directory and eDirectory built into the product. Here again, the all tag. As you can see, everything is supported here in the same way, so it doesn't really matter what OS we're using. With our /11, let's start treating it special like a OES Linux machine. We'll go ahead and put in our credentials here, and we'll select an initiator. This can be any OES Linux machine in the case of OES. And in general, everything in the product provides the ability to control the initiator, so we can control the routing internally. You don't have to bring in the network person for everything. Here we've got group-wise, I believe 2014 installation. You can see the domain there, and just put that into the groupware group. I'll also add a backup for the post office. Everything in the Novell world is well supported. Everything in the Windows world is well supported, and also the Linux world. So you have the ability to add specific jobs for everything. One big thing that we're doing differently with the backups, we include the NSS volume backups with the licensing for the agents. So there's nothing special for backing up NSS volumes. We can handle the clustered volumes or anything like that. Additionally, with the eDirectory, we're backing up the schema at the same time that we're backing up the database in one snapshot. So you end up with something that's always restorable, even in the event that the schema had been modified from some installation somewhere. So we just put it in the task group. This seems like a little bit of busy work here, adding things to the group, but the nice thing is that once we get everything added, we never have to go back to that client again. We've also got NSS volume support. If we had a clustered volume, that would appear as its own client instance here. So we have that, data volumes. Okay, so at this point, we've set up a complete backup of the databases, the group-wise, NSS volumes, eDirectory, and the actual system. Here's what it looks like to set up a virtual environment. We'd set up a new client for VMware. So we select the operating system from the supported OS. We are able to do everything through vCenter. In this case, we just have a little ESX server here we're writing directly. Again, put in the credentials. We're going to follow high availability around. So if a virtual machine moves from one host to the next or anything like that, we're going to be able to automatically follow that. With our VMware backups, we can do the full backups, we can do the block level incremental backups, we can do the used or touched blocks backups, and so you get different granularity levels for whatever environment you want to work in. One neat thing about the full provision size backups or raw backups is we save the VMDKs out on our storage as separate files, and that allows us the ability to do instant restore. By instant restore, I mean instant 1 or 2 minute restore, where we go and share our backup storage with the ESX server, start the virtual machine immediately, and live migrate it back to the ESX server. So that gives you, in a real SAN failure, the ability to actually get everything back up and running, in just a couple of minutes using a backup NAS. With the single file, we actually mount those images, and we're able to pull out single files, whether it's NSS volume or Windows, any combination, and push those back to agents. So you get a lot more control there with your images. A big thing that we're doing with VMware that's different than other vendors is, in the case of a Windows machine, we're running VSS, and we're confirming that that file system is consistent before we make the backup. I think in the common world, if the VSS doesn't complete because it didn't have time or didn't work or something like that, the snapshot just gets run by the other vendor automatically. In our case, we will, provide a warning to you, so you have the option to, actually make a good quality backup of that machine. So basic stuff. With the other vendors, things like Hyper-V are well supported. Same deal with the all task there. Citrix is well supported. All we're really doing there is changing the graphic. And so if we just select our OS, begin our credentials, and I select my initiator. If I wanted to save this data to a different machine than this one, I could use that machine as the initiator to that cluster. So you don't have to route all your data through the backup server if you don't want to. In the case of Citrix, their API also offers host and pool configuration backups. So we just put the task in the group, same thing. Our default schedule is set up like this. We have 10 p.m. full on Fridays, and that window lasts all the way until 8 a.m. Monday. This new day job is our built-in management task, and this does our own internal database management, cleanup, and also restarts our service. So this closes the window automatically every morning. And then we have incremental windows going from 10 p.m. during the week, again back to the 8 a.m. where we're closing it. And so the interesting thing about this is we're just leaving a big window for all weekend. All of this can be changed to fit the environment. Ideally, all of our backups are completed by 7:30 in the morning, and so this job is writing a catalog to the end of the tape, if you will. We don't make any requirements as far as how you migrate data. So you could migrate data from disk to tape, or disk to tape to disk, or disk to cloud, or whatever combination you want. In the case of a dedupe volume, then you're able to back up the data into a dedupe volume or migrate it into a dedupe volume, and then replicate it And it's really the same functionality as the migration, where we're just copying the save set. But in that case, we're doing deduplicated blocks. That's great for cloud. That's great for WAN or a DR site. Commonly, we're coupling that with our auto restore feature, which is included with all of the versions. And the automatic restore feature allows us to make backups into a storage and automatically restore them. So commonly, you'd have, data center environment, VMware, maybe, and a bunch of databases and operating systems. You're backing all of that up into your dedupe storage. We're keeping some of those images available locally for instant restore if SAN fails. We're replicating that over WAN to a DR location or a cloud location. And if we have a VMware machine over there, we can actually automatically restore them every day. So, you have a lot of latitude to build a warm standby type environment. Also, it helps you build a DR environment with ongoing verification. So you don't have to allocate time every year to go through the DR stuff. It also means that if something's going on with the DR, that you get that fixed, as the problems arise, and so you always have a functional DR system. Any combination of the remote sync and cluster type storages are all supported. And so you don't have to, you can maybe write your file backups here to some kind of NFS cluster, and then pick that up at another location, something like Red Hat Storage or Cluster. And we're able to work with any combination of those types of systems. We do extensive logging. Everything that happens in the back end is logged. This GUI is just a SQL interface, so we can do unlimited custom reporting. We have a query builder here in Job States Backup that lets us, if I want to know, I don't know, what tape drive number I used, then I can actually pull the SQL call here and pop it into the email notifications. None of that stuff is required, but between the GUI log and the day log, it means that you don't have to call support for every little thing because you can see how every part works. Everything in the back end is command line driven. All of the commands are self-documenting, and whenever the GUI runs a command, you can see the command that it runs. So that gives you, ability to automate and do any type of, pulling information from the system, what tapes are used that day, anything like that. By default, we're doing 3 forms of email notification. We're doing an affirmative summary, hey, all these jobs succeeded. You get that every day. And then we're also doing a trimmed down SQL export of our catalog database. And so if we were to lose our backup server, we could grab that email and, fresh install the package and then import the database. So this provides, application level DR for our system very easily. It's also structured so that, since we're using the same code on all operating systems, we're not doing any custom drivers. We could actually, import a Windows machine catalog and into a Linux installation. All we'd have to do would be to change our drive targets to, from drive letters to paths. So that's really the basis of the setup of the software. This is actually a real installation. There's no, these are all live machines. When I use the system, I think one of the big benefits for me is that I go and I touch a client, I set up the tasks, I put them in the group, and then I can walk away, and I don't have to think about, how it's doing it or what the order is. The system's able to pool all the jobs at once, run them all at the same time in a predictable fashion. So having the quick setup and the one-shot installation and setup for the client, and then agentless support for if I have a bunch of machines in a virtual environment, makes it real quick to get up and going, and very reliable and easy to use as far as not having to be in there babysitting it all the time. It really does work. We're also using our standard agent part. You may have noticed that this demo Windows machine here is a server installation, and I'm able to use that as a client. So everything's stackable in the system, which lets me, pretty much do whatever I want. At this point, I'd like to open it up to questions. If you have any questions at all, please put those in the question box.
And you must have done a really good job, James, because does not look like there are any questions so far. So if anyone would like to enter a last-minute question, we'll go ahead and get those answered. Otherwise, we invite you to join us on our ongoing webinar series. We should have another webinar coming up here in about 3 weeks, I believe. So we would love to see you again. If anyone has any questions, you know, or would like to ask some offline questions, if you'd like to download a trial version, we have a fully functional 30-day trial version that's available. So if you would like to download that, you can go to our website, and I'm going to go ahead and just put up some contact information here. So we're more than happy to, you know, help you guys with installation or setup. If you would like to get SEP up and running, if you'd like to do some testing, do a little proof of concept, just give us a call. We're happy to help you get set up, happy to help you get everything configured, answer any questions you have. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And it does not look like there are any questions, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up for the day. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us. We look forward to seeing you on future webinars, and we hope to talk to you soon if you would like to do some testing or have any individual specific questions. So thanks everyone, have a great day, and we'll see you on our next webinar. Take care.